Hi guys! In today's video, we'll discuss the history and lasting impact of minstrel shows. These performances started back in the 1800s, but their influence didn't stop there. They shaped a lot of American comedy, film, and television. We'll break down where minstrel shows came from, how they spread stereotypes, and why their legacy is still important to talk about now. Racism, exploitation, and inside jobs are calling. Answer the phone. Minstrel shows emerged in the early 19th century as one of the first distinctly American forms of popular entertainment. Originating with white performers in blackface, these productions blended music, dance, and comedic sketches that presented exaggerated portrayals of African American life. By the 1840s, minstrel shows had become a dominant theatrical form, traveling widely and influencing stagecraft with standardized acts, stock characters, and ensemble formats. After the Civil War and the abolition of slavery, minstrelsy continued to thrive, adapting its material to suit shifting audiences. Characters such as the Zip Coon, which is a dandified free black man, the Mammy, a black female caretaker, and the Pickaninny, which is a racial slur for a small black child, became staples, appearing not only on stage, but also in sheet music, advertisements, and popular imagery. During the late 19th century, black performers increasingly entered minstrel troupes, though they were often required to don blackface themselves and conform to the existing conventions of the genre. Minstrel shows began to give way to other theatrical forms, yet many of their tropes and character types persisted. These images intersected with the rise of Jim Crow laws, helping justify segregation and second class citizenship by presenting distorted visions of black identity. Jim Crow refers to the system of laws and social practices that enforced racial segregation in the United States from the late 19th century through the mid 20th century. Named after a racist minstrel character, Jim Crow laws separated black and white people in schools, transportation, housing, and public spaces, while also restricting black political and economic power. In this way, minstrelsy not only entertained audiences, but also laid the cultural foundation for Jim Crow, embedding racist caricatures into law, policy, and everyday life. Named after a racist minstrel character, Jim Crow laws separated black and white people in schools, transportation, housing, and public spaces, while also restricting black political and economic power. In this way, minstrelsy not only entertained audiences, but also laid the cultural foundation for Jim Crow, embedding racist caricatures into law, policy, and everyday life. As media and entertainment progressed, so did the minstrel shows. One of the earliest examples of minstrelsy's survival in new media was the radio program Amos and Andy, which first aired in 1928. I first learned of this show when watching a video essay by Little Shop of Alley, whose channel is amazing and focuses on analyzing film and television through the lens of feminism, fatphobia, and so on. Definitely go check her out if you haven't before. Anywho, created and voiced by two white actors, Freeman Gostin and Charles Carell, the show portrayed the lives of two black characters through exaggerated dialects and comic situations rooted in racial stereotypes. It quickly became one of the most popular radio programs in the nation, demonstrating how minstrel tropes could be repackaged for modern audiences. Even when the show transitioned to television in the 1950s with an all-black cast, the characters were still confined to the same caricatures that originated on the minstrel stage. While it gave black actors steady work during a time of limited opportunities, Amos and Andy reinforced demeaning portrayals of African Americans and shaped how white audiences imagined black life. Its legacy reveals how minstrelsy adapted to new technologies, ensuring the endurance of racist stereotypes long after the minstrel show itself declined. In fact, minstrel shows laid the groundwork for modern American entertainment by establishing many of the conventions that shaped theater, comedy, and later film and television. They popularized touring circuits, standardized comic archetypes, and introduced the variety format that would evolve into vaudeville, radio, and television variety shows like SNL or In Living Color. The use of stock characters, exaggerated physical comedy, and musical interludes also became staples of mainstream entertainment long after minstrelsy itself declined. Even more enduring were the racial stereotypes minstrel shows normalized, which also migrated into Hollywood films, cartoons, sitcoms, and stand-up comedy. In this sense, minstrelsy not only influenced the structure of American popular culture, but also embedded racist caricatures into its foundation, leaving a legacy that still informs how stories are told and who gets to be represented on stage and screen. Now, when I first learned of white people literally dressing up as black people for entertainment, I was shocked and disturbed. I immediately thought, why are they so obsessed with us? I discussed this in both my African American Lit and Black Psychology classes in undergrad, which is actually one of the main inspirations for this video. But I remember my psych professor specifically telling me, no, it's not obsession, but something more. While my lit professor exclaimed how it was about superiority. And after doing some research, I now know there were at least 4 reasons for the emergence and popularity of minstrel shows that goes beyond just obsession or infatuation. Despite minstrel shows being around for over a century, they became extremely popular after the Civil War and Emancipation because they reassured white audiences who were anxious about the social changes brought by black freedom. Instead of facing black people as newly emancipated citizens demanding rights, minstrel shows reduced them to childish, lazy, or foolish stereotypes. And this mockery functioned as a mask for white fear. It allowed audiences to laugh away their anxieties about black equality, or reinforcing the idea that African Americans were unfit for full participation in society. In this way, minstrelsy wasn't just entertainment, it was a coping mechanism for white America, turning fear of black progress into ridicule that would shape American culture for generations. Minstrel shows also thrived because they gave white audiences a way to bond over shared feelings of superiority. In the years after emancipation, many whites feared the loss of their social dominance, and minstrel performances provided a collective space to reaffirm whiteness as the cultural norm. By laughing together at caricatures of black people as buffoons, lazy workers, or hypersexual figures, white audiences created a sense of unity built on ridicule. The humor wasn't just entertainment, but a ritual of reassurance, reminding audiences that no matter the legal changes of emancipation, they still held the power to define and degrade black identity. This shared mockery created a psychological in-group, strengthening white identity while isolating and dehumanizing African Americans. Minstrel shows gave white audiences and performers a powerful way to control the narrative around black identity. Once free, African Americans were no longer legally bound to slavery, and their lives, ambitions, and voices increasingly challenged the social order. Minstrelsy responded by defining blackness on white terms, reducing complex lives into simple, laughable caricatures: the lazy coon, the nurturing mammy, or the aggressive sapphire. By creating these exaggerated one-dimensional images, white performers dictated how the public should perceive black people, shaping attitudes long before many white Americans ever had any personal interactions with black people. In essence, minstrelsy allowed white society to contain and frame black freedom in a way that made it more manageable. Economic resentment was another driving force behind minstrel shows, emerging directly from the upheaval of emancipation. When slavery ended, white landowners and employers could no longer exploit black labor for free, and many resented the fact that formerly enslaved people sought fair wages, land, and independence. Minstrel caricatures like the lazy Negro transformed this anxiety into humor, portraying black people as unwilling or incapable of working. By laughing at these false depictions, white audiences could justify their economic frustrations and rationalize attempts to maintain control over black labor through sharecropping, low wages, and discriminatory practices. We see this in the watermelon trope, which Little House of Ally also mentioned, where white people felt threatened by black people's economic independence. You see, many formerly enslaved African Americans grew and sold watermelons as a source of income, which only increased white society's fear of black autonomy and prosperity. So in response, white artists and performers created caricatures linking black people to watermelons, portraying them as childish, lazy, and only interested in simple pleasures. This trope spread through post-Civil War minstrel shows, political cartoons, advertisements, and postcards, becoming a visual shorthand for black inferiority, similar to other minstrel-era stereotypes. So psychologically, the stereotype allowed white audiences to belittle black progress and independence, turning economic anxiety into humor. Today, many facets of minstrel shows can still be seen, especially in black films. Many directors and actors have taken some of the tropes and turned them on their heads, using them as forms of endearment, or simply taking control of a narrative previously used to suppress them. Before we break down some films, you know I have to give a disclaimer. I am not trying to disrespect or undermine the legacy of these actors or directors, but simply observing how some of their work continues stereotypes and racial propaganda historically meant to harm Black people's reputation and social status. So we're just having a conversation, okay? Okay. First, let's discuss Eddie Murphy in Norbit, which is the film Little House of Ally mentioned in her video. So shout out to you, girl. I feel like I've mentioned you 55 times in this one video. But anyways, Norbit, which Eddie Murphy co-wrote with his brother Charlie, directly reflects the legacy of minstrel shows through its use of exaggerated stereotypes for comedic effect. The character Rasputia, a loud, aggressive, and hypersexual Black woman, embodies the same tropes created in minstrelsy, such as the sapphire or angry Black woman caricature. While Eddie Murphy, a Black actor, portrays the character, the humor relies on mocking her physicality, behavior, and speech, much like 19th century white performers mock Black people on stage. And of course, there are other aspects of his mockery of the Black woman in this film, like his use of fatphobia, which is rampant. And actually, what are you guys' thoughts on the film? Like, you've ever seen it? Did you like it? Did you know it was wrong but still had funny moments? I just remember feeling like it was odd. I think Eddie Murphy has some great films, but some of them are just, you know, like, what made you do this? And I think this really speaks to a larger conversation of comedy that is rooted in and relies on making fun of a group of people, which is another video. Anywho, the film transforms exaggerated traits into spectacle for laughs, echoing the psychological function of minstrelsy, controlling Black representation and allowing audiences to bond over shared superiority. In this way, Norbit demonstrates how the structure of fear, ridicule, and caricature established in minstrel shows persist in modern media, even when performed by Black artists themselves. Next, we have Big Mama's House, which Martin Lawrence executive produced. The film reflects the legacy of minstrel shows through its use of cross-dressing and exaggerated caricature for comedic effect. Lawrence, a Black man, dons the persona of Big Mama, a loud, over-the-top, and physically exaggerated Black woman, echoing the same theatrical tradition where male performers in minstrelsy dressed as Black women to mock and entertain. The humor centers on her size, aggressiveness, and eccentric behavior. Much like minstrel performances relied on exaggerated physicality and personality to amuse audiences. So even though the film is created by and for Black performers, it still draws from the same structural patterns of minstrelsy, turning Black bodies and behaviors into spectacle, reinforcing stereotypes while generating laughter. Lastly, we have Tyler Perry's Medea, a character Perry created, directs, produces, and writes around. Medea is a direct descendant of the minstrel tradition, embodying many of the same techniques used to create humor and spectacle. Perry, a Black man, portrays Medea as a loud, assertive, and physically exaggerated Black woman, echoing the cross-dressing and caricatured performances of men in 19th century minstrelsy. Like the films mentioned before, the comedy often comes from her behavior, speech, and over-the-top personality. While Perry reclaims these tropes with nuance and cultural insight, transforming Medea into a figure of both authority and humor, the character still relies on exaggeration and stereotype, rooted in the same theatrical and psychological patterns of fear, mockery, and control that underpin minstrel performances. Thus, the character demonstrates how minstrel-inspired caricatures can be repurposed by Black creators while still embodying negative tropes. Another point I would like to make briefly concerning all three films is the use of fatphobia. In all three films, the character's size is used as a primary source of humor, continuing a long history of mocking Black bodies. In minstrel shows, emphasis of physical traits, like lips, skin, or body shape, was central to making caricatures amusing and safe for white audiences to consume. Similarly, these modern characters rely on bodily exaggeration. Their large size, physicality, and presence are often the focus of jokes or slapstick comedy. This intersects with fatphobia, reinforcing cultural bias that associates larger bodies with silliness, incompetence, or lack of control. For Black women in particular, it compounds historical stereotypes, blending racialized and body-based mockery. While actors like Eddie Murphy and Tyler Perry may be reclaiming these portrayals, the humor still leans on long-standing social bias about weight, making fatphobia a key lens for understanding how these characters continue minstrel-like behavior in contemporary media. Since I've been editing this video, I've seen TikToks about minstrelsy, particularly how streamers like Kai Cenat offer audiences a taste of modern-day minstrelsy. I don't watch streamers or have a Twitch or anything, and I have always viewed those platforms as something for gamers. In the past, I really only saw those streamers on funny highlight moments I saw on TikTok or from girls crushing on them, like how people love Duke Dennis. And obviously now the streamers are gaining a bigger platform, especially Kai with his having a multitude of celebrities on his stream. And this is wonderful for them, but it does come with its own criticism. In terms of minstrelsy, I think Kai's popularity is connected to its legacy in the sense that many audiences, consciously or unconsciously, still enjoy exaggerated performances of blackness, high energy, loudness, unpredictability, because those traits were historically coded as entertaining through minstrel stereotypes. But at the same time, streamers aren't simply reproducing minstrel caricatures. They're also authentic personalities, building communities on their own terms and leveraging platforms to become modern-day celebrities in this era of social media. So the tension lies in how their genuine style of humor overlaps with what audiences are primed to expect from Black performers. It's less about accusing them of being minstrels and more about asking how historical patterns shape what kinds of Black expression get the most visibility and profitability. And again, I don't watch them consistently, so if you have a difference of opinion, please let me know down below why. This was a longer one, but I've been meaning to get it out, so I really hope you guys like it. What do you guys think about this history? I have so many questions. What are your thoughts on Black directors and actors continuing these tropes? Do you think it's a reclamation of power or a hindrance to the community? Is there a way for mockery to be funny without harming the group of people being mocked? And why do you think certain comedians stick to making fun of certain groups? Let me know what you think in the comments down below. Thanks so much for picking up the phone, and I'll see you next time. Bye.